name's Mark Bailey. I've been building guitars for 15 years or more. On the first day, we lay out the drawing, lay out all the parts so that we know where everything's going to go, and then we can use this to build the instrument. We don't want it to go all the way in yet because there's still some sanding to do on the sides. And we'll do the final fitting after the fretboard's glued on. Okay, so that's fantastic. That's all the hard work done. That's your 3 facets done. The next stage is to just blend it in, and I'll show you how we do that. So Graham. Yep. Watch this. Go across the way like this. Every book will tell you to plane along the grain. Yep. It's much harder. Okay. For some reason it's easier to go across like that. Perfect. Anyone seen the green vice? The green vice. Was it not on there, Josh, earlier on?
That was yesterday, Mark.
Green vice on your hand. Anyone seen the green vice?
Guitars have you made?
Well, I turned this.
Yeah, but it's not the arm.
It's called a neck, Graham.
I'm nervous.
Fucking arm. It is though, isn't it? The world's mental. Yeah. I try and stay out of it. That's my plan. Hey folks, we're back. Welcome back to the Bailey Workshop for guitar making channel. Guitarmaking.co.uk is the website. Yeah, hopefully everything's working okay after last week's debacle. Yeah, I had some good puns lined up. Internet got a bit gluey last week. Got into a bit of a sticky situation. But today we're just going to get stuck into it. Boom. Yeah, so today we're going to redo what I attempted to do last Saturday, which was I'm going to tell you a bit about the glue that we use as guitar makers. So it's a question that I'm always getting asked. Mark, what kind of glue do you use? So I'm going to take you through it. There's actually quite a few that we use for different purposes. So I'm going to show you a few different types of glue. What we use them for, what's their best use scenario kind of thing. A few different tools for applying it and cleaning it up. And I'm going to do a few little demos along the way just to show that. So I've got a little fingerboard repair to do. Let's try that. Close up cam. got a little fingerboard repair to do. I'm going to show you. Little chip out the fretboard. I'm going to do a little bit of inlaying if I can find. I did cut a couple of little bits of inlay. There we go. So I'm going to do a couple of super quick inlays. And I'm going to use 2 different types of glue. We're going to do it first with super glue and then with epoxy. Actually, probably the other way around. We'll do the epoxy first because it takes a bit longer. So yeah, a couple of demos lined up, a little repair job, a little inlay job, and then I'm going to finish up by, as I promised last time, is we're going to glue the fretboard onto this. I'm just going to go through the general rules of gluing as we go. So as always, I've planned for about half an hour to an hour, but depending on how many questions we get, we might run over. Yeah, so if you're new to this channel and guitar making is something you're interested in, then make sure you subscribe and like it and share it and do all the YouTubey stuff. That helps us a lot. Helps keep the channel growing, which is what we're aiming for. So we just shot past 5,000 subscribers. We've got our 5,000 subscriber special coming up, but this isn't it. And we've also got lots of other good stuff coming up. So this is actually part 9 of guitar making tech, I've called it, tools and tech. So what I'm doing is going through all of the basic techniques that you would need to build a guitar. So like I say, if you're interested in building guitars, then I'd suggest you go back to part 1, watch the whole thing through, but you can cherry pick and just pick and choose as you need. Like, so I did a special on routing, one on bandsawing, for instance. So hopefully there'll be something there that will get you out of a sticky situation. Can we have your glue puns in the chat, please? Glue puns in the chat. So yeah, welcome folks from all over the world. Carol's just going to do a little shout out for us.
Well, there's actually loads of people now.
Who we got?
We started off, as always, Matt Damon. Matt Toman.
Matt Damon.
No, not
Matt Damon. It's not Matt Damon.
Matt Toman. He's
Sorry,
in Denver.
Matt.
And then we had Carly. She's watching in Australia. So that's the 2 across the globe. And then Norwich. TV's in Norwich. He's in between. Where have you gone?
I'm just getting a big drill.
Well, we've got all sorts. So Razor 101 YT, TV 101, Michael Abbott, Rock and Roll 912, Darren Bagquest. We've got Theron and Sue. They're watching over on the West Coast down in England, and Keelan 98. She's in the house. And Grey Heart's watching from Virginia.
Who was it who sent the?
Congrats on the. Well, that was TV 101. So he's not.
Is he TV 101 here?
He's not at the headmaster's office this week.
He's not in, but TV 101. When you watch it back, just want to say thank you for the brew dog. That'll go down well on a Thursday.
Well, I said we'll be drunk for a month.
We only drink once a week.
So
certainly not in the workshop.
Everybody here.
Not while I'm working. Definitely
Russ
not.
is in the house. Do you want
You
to
know,
tell
even
them
if
about,
I have one drink, I won't touch any of these tools. By the way, just so you know.
do you want to tell them about the changes that you've made, just so that left me off
The changes that we've made.
Just to the what we're doing.
No, I can't remember any of them right now.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I've been crawling around in the attic all week, doing testing, trying to get the live stream working a bit better. Fingers crossed, hopefully it will. By the way, can you do that? That's a special guitar making technique. Cross all your fingers. You need to be able to do that, really, if you're going to be a guitar maker. You need to learn to cross all of your fingers like that. I've been crawling around. I hate spiders. I've been crawling around in spiders' webs. All for you guys, so that we could get a decent quality stream. So I've hardwired everything, and fingers crossed, everything will be good. Let me know if there's any issues with the sound or the image, and we'll take note. Hopefully the cool Roy Mole is not watching Countryfile and leeching off the internet, and we'll be all right for a bit. I think he sleeps during the day, so we'll be all right.
Different program. Well, so Stephen Adams says, hello guys, my fretboard and neck blank arrived today. Looks great, thanks.
Rock and roll.
Which is good. James Bissett's in the house.
Hey James.
And yeah, I don't know if you missed. Grey Heart was saying congratulations on the subscribers. So
Thank you all. Yes, there'll be a 5,000 subscriber special coming up, but this isn't it. So let's just get stuck into it.
arf, arf.
That's the second time I've done that joke. I'll try not to do it again. So what I thought I'd do first is let's just do these little inlays, eh? Whoops. I've just got a couple of random offcut shapes, right? So nothing special about them. They're just offcuts from another inlay that I was making. So there's nothing special about the actual shape. They're just random shapes. What I'm going to try and do is show you a lot of inlays on factory-made guitars. They might have a fancy shape, but quite often they just cut out a great big hole and glue the inlay in. Easy peasy. If you want to know how to do inlays properly, I did a whole session on that recently. You'll have to go on the channel there and search for it until we've got the full masterclass done. By the way, on YouTube we are doing these live streams, and I do tend to waffle on a bit, and obviously it's not edited at all. Anything could happen, and usually does. So we do have full versions of my courses, Build Your Own Acoustic and Build Your Own Electric Guitar, where we start with a blank piece of paper and you draw your guitar. I guide you through the process, and then we make the patterns, and then we make the guitar. So I show you through the whole process, and then you can make as many guitars as you want. That's the idea. So I think it's the best possible start you could get, short of working in a guitar factory, which I was lucky enough to do. So let's get on and do it. I'm going to do just a really bad inlay in this. I don't know which camera will be best. I've got a bit of scrap wood here, and I'm just going to drill a hole that's big enough for the inlay. I'll do two, one each, and we're going to do one with epoxy and one with super glue to see which one works best.
One more. I've got to interrupt you, can I?
Yeah, of course you can.
Right, you've got Grey Heart says, I've got a glue question, but it's stuck on my tongue. Right. And Rick
I could tell you a story about that.
Rick in a towel says, Mark, I know it gets hard, but could you clamp down on the glue jokes? Wink, wink.
Yeah. Boom.
Right.
Right, I'm just going to drill a great big hole. This is not the way to do inlays, by the way. So it's just for an example. Let me go just a tiny bit deeper. But as I was saying, you'd be surprised how many factories just make a massive hole, plop their inlay in, glue it in, call it done. You look, if you go to a guitar shop, yeah, if such things exists anymore, do guitar shops still exist? Yes, support your local guitar shop. Get in there and check out the quality of the inlay work, and you'll find that it's probably pretty rough. Is this one going to be big enough? So I'm just drilling an oversized hole that's way big for the inlay. So let's pretend they're arrows, shall we? They're kind of arrow shaped. Let's pretend they're arrows. Look, they fit into the hole. As you can see, it's a massive hole. So let's do a test. Which is going to look best? Epoxy or super glue? Let's do epoxy first and get that out of the way. Now, in fact, I've got another couple of weird things that I want to get out of the way as well. So let's just do this. So with epoxy, we do a equal amount of each one. This is a 5-minute formula. So as soon as we start mixing it, we've got 5 minutes before it goes hard. We call it going off, before it goes off. We've got 5 minutes. So I'm not going to need much, am I? Tiny bit. I'll try and do an equal amount of each one. I'm using a nice smooth surface here, just a bit of scrap wood to mix it up on. And most epoxies are a two-part, so it's a resin and then a hardener. And then you mix it up and you've got 5 minutes in this case. There's a 30-minute version and there are other versions available, lots of different types of epoxy. So, mixing it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some black powder. So this is Perflex, available for the, you know, for the Celtic inlays that you've seen me doing. I'll show you that again in a minute. It's Perflex. It's like a black powder that you mix with epoxy to do your inlay stuff. And this is just from a car body repair shop, just black powder. They use it for repairing bumpers and things like that. But, you know, there's hardly any difference. For all I know, it could be the same stuff. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to use the, let's use the Perflex, why not? Splash out. Bit of Perflex black on there. Mix it into a paste. So the disadvantage of epoxy is that every time you mix it, you might get a slightly different colour. Whereas the super glue is always the same colour. So let's fill the hole with glue. And then I'm just going to drop the inlay on like that. And we're going to come back to this at the end, because it's a 5-minute epoxy, so it should be dry by then. We're going to come back to it at the end, clean it up and see which one looks the best. So let's just do the super glue one. So super glue comes in many different varieties. I once counted up 7 different types of super glue in my cupboard. Well, I've cut it down a bit now, cut my super glue habit down. Now I just have about 3 different types. But if you are using super glue at all, you should get some of this stuff, which is debonder. This will avoid you taking a trip to casualty with a guitar stuck to your face, which, let's face it, nobody enjoys that, and they're sick of seeing me down there. What is it this week, Mark? It's a Gibson Les Paul stuck to his face. No, I try and make sure that doesn't happen. So this one I'm filling up with super glue. Let's just make sure it's full up. And if you're new to super glue, you might not know this stuff. This is accelerator for super glue, or zip kicker. So this is CA accelerator for super glues. So this will make it go hard instantly. I'll cover up the epoxy so it doesn't go on the epoxy, and then just give it a squirt. Now that glue, believe it or not, will already be dry. See that? It's already hard. What I'm going to do is add just a little bit more glue on top, just to make sure that I've covered the hole. Now, in case you missed it, I wouldn't normally do inlays like this. This is extremely rough, just to do a test to see which one looks best at the end. Normally I would very carefully cut out a hole that's exactly the right shape for the inlay, and we do that by very carefully marking out with a pointy stick or a scalpel, and then we machine it with a miniature router. But that's for another video. This is just a quick test to show you different types of glue. So that's epoxy and super glue. So super glue, as you noticed, I was using black super glue, and if you're doing any kind of inlay at all, I always recommend you use ebony and then you can use black super glue. See that epoxy is starting to go hard already. Maybe add a bit more to make sure it's sitting proud. So the idea of inlays is we make sure everything's sitting proud, and then when we sand it flush, it should look perfect. So the glue's got to be proper dry, obviously, before you can do that. So I'm going to put that to one side for a bit now, and we'll come back to that at the end. So if you remember, the big one there is super glue, the smaller one there is epoxy, and you could, if this was, say, different coloured wood, then you would mix a different coloured paste. You saw me using the black paste, but you could use the actual dust from the wood to make sure that it matches. Now it does always go darker, and if you're intending on putting any stain on at all, then don't use super glue as a filler, because it doesn't take a stain very well at all. So if you're staining the wood, don't use super glue as a filler. Just use ordinary wood filler. So this sort of filler that you can get from pretty much any hardware shop nowadays, any old modern wood filler will do, and it takes a stain. So if you've got different coloured wood, you can actually stain the filler different colours. So just a brief mention of filler there whilst we're talking about glues, because glue can be used as a filler. Okay, we'll just do a few questions.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah, we'll do a few questions, and I've got some wild cards.
Well, okay, because you've had a few. So, really simple question: How do you stop your bottle from super glue bottle from clogging up, from going hard? How do you stop it?
Personally, I use a bit of masking tape. So while we're at it, should we do the masking tape trick?
Don't start them off.
No!
Don't start them off. Right, that comes up sometimes in the comments, and I don't mention it to you because.
Yeah, use masking tape for its proper purpose. This is one of my wild cards actually. Was as we're talking about glues and adhesives, I wanted to briefly mention double-sided tape. So the best double-sided tape to use, don't use carpet tape, it's an absolute nightmare. What you're looking for is called exhibition tape or NEC tape. This is ours, we supply this on the website if you're stuck finding it. We supply this. It's called NEC approved or exhibition tape, and it's super strong, and the best thing is you can peel it off. It comes off in one piece without damaging anything or ripping to pieces. Some of that cheaper stuff you can spend longer taking it off than it takes to do the actual job, because it all disintegrates. So this is the good stuff available on the website if you can't find it. So yeah, double-sided tape. And you may have heard about the masking tape trick. But we're not going to go down that route, are we, Carol?
No, we're not. So listen, so did you fully answer how you stop your super glue clogging up?
Yeah, that's what started me off about masking tape.
So
Well, yeah, you keep the lid on it. Most of it comes with a lid, obviously. So you can keep your lid on. But if you lose the lid, then I just use a bit of masking tape like that. That's the only time masking tape goes anywhere near my super glue.
okay, so
I'm just joking.
that was I think that was Russ. I think that was Russ that asked that. So,
Yeah, I just put a bit of masking tape on the end.
Mark Greyheart says, so epoxy takes stains? Question mark.
Epoxy takes stains? No. No, if you're going to use a stain, then you need to use a normal kind of wood filler, is what I'd recommend. Yeah, sorry if that wasn't clear. I said super glue doesn't take a stain, but epoxy's not so great either at taking a stain. So I would probably use just ordinary wood filler if I was going to stain the piece of wood. And like I say, you can actually stain the filler.
Okay, so Steve Adams and TV101 are saying that they both Well, Steve said his NEC tape arrived as well today, and he said it's the best stuff ever. Brilliant.
Fantastic, brilliant.
And TV's
Good to know.
Agreeing with, you know, better
Yeah,
than the
I've
cheap,
tried them all.
better than the cheap double-sided.
Is that
tape.
TV 101 in?
He's also saying that as well. Yeah.
Because Tony wasn't in earlier, was he?
Yes, he's been here the whole time.
Oh. Didn't we say?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, right.
Right. So back to Carly in Australia asked. Well, she said that she wants to make an electric with burl wood and epoxy. Have you got anything to say about using burl wood?
Yeah. Well, that's the way to go.
Right.
Obviously, you need to fill all those holes. With normally with that kind of wood, you wouldn't be putting a stain on anyway. And there are ways to apply a stain. You could spray it on rather than rag it on into the wood. So you could seal the surface first and then apply a stain. You could spray a stain on rather than ragging it on onto the bare wood. What I was getting at is if you were trying to stain the bare wood. So the way round it would be to fill it with epoxy first, or whatever you want to use, super glue, anything you want. Fill it with epoxy, seal it, and then spray, you mix your colour into your lacquer and you spray that. So you get like a film of colour. That's like a standard technique rather than putting the colour on the wood. So yeah, as we'll go through when we do finally get around to the finishing course, there's lots of different ways to finish a guitar. You can put the stain directly on the wood, but you don't have to. So if you're using super glue as a filler, then I would suggest that you don't. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. Always do a test anyway. If you're not sure, you could always do a bit of trial and error and test and see what works and what doesn't.
Carly says that she thinks it takes a pigment. She thinks epoxy takes a pigment.
Yeah, I would say just make sure you test.
Yeah.
And then you'll know for sure. What I'm going to do here is use a bit of masking tape to, this is a little chip out of the wood. I'm going to mask up the area all around it. And then I'm going to build up that corner with some black super glue. But we could use clear super glue with some of the black powder in. I can just build this up in layers to repair the wood. We'll sand that later on and check that. There's another one this end. There, you can see that now. So I really like to use the black super glue for this, but you could just use the dust from the wood itself, obviously. So let me just see what that looks like.
Can I ask? Carly asked another question, which kind of seems to fit.
Go on then.
Well, what she said is, in fact, actually, I don't know if it was Carly. Somebody asked a question. Are there different glues for different jobs? I'm sorry if I've forgotten who it was.
Yes, well that's what hopefully we're going to go through today. I'm going to show you some different jobs for different glues.
Yeah, different super glues.
Yeah. Now, one thing I was going to say at the start, which I forgot to mention, is that you could build a guitar with just one type of glue. You could probably pick any of these. You could use super glue if you really wanted to do the whole thing. We've got normal wood glue and epoxy. You could just pick one and build the whole guitar with that. But there are certain jobs that are good for certain things, for instance. So that's what I'm trying to show you. So inlays, for instance, probably wouldn't be a good idea to use wood glue for this. Epoxy or super glue is best. And we'll find out which one looks best at the end. So this one, what I'm going to do is just rub it. Maybe we could do it a bit more light. I'm going to rub it, just create some dust.
the other lens be button?
And then we'll use some clear super glue this time, I think. So the clear super glue comes in different viscosities. So we've got a really thin one, I don't know if you can see that, thin, super thin. It's actually thinner than water. So that's really good for getting into splits and cracks. And by the time you've fixed it with this and sanded it, you would never even see it. And obviously there's a medium, and then there's a thick one. So I'm going to try and build it up with the thick one and some wood dust. You can give it a squirt again. Sand it while it's still wet, and the dust will get forced into the glue. Because it's black, it's fine to do this. But like I say, I think the black glue's better. We'll find out in a minute. So that was actually quite a nasty little chip, if you remember. And now, if I give it a squirt, there's still a little bit of damage right on the corner, so I'll just get that. Actually, it might take 2, 3 or maybe even 4 goes, but you can see how you can build it up like that, and just rub some dust into it. Now if I give it a spray, hopefully you can see it's pretty much disappeared. Gone. It's not bad, is it? There's a tiny little divot there. I could probably do it again, but I'll leave it. Actually, it'd probably just sand out if I gave it a bit more sanding. So it might look a different colour when it dries, but when you put the finish on, it will go black again. Black. See, there's only me and you know about that now. Nobody will ever know. Let's have a look at this end, which was just black super glue, which I think the advantage, like I say, of the black super glue is it's consistent, so it's always the same colour. So when you make up a paste, like your wood dust, you can guarantee that you won't quite fill it and you'll have to do it a bit more, and then what happens is you can never mix up exactly the same colour again. So that's why black super glue is really, really handy. So there you go, that little chip pretty much vanished. So we're going to leave these inlays a bit longer because the epoxy takes a while. It needs to be proper dry before we sand it, but it is 5-minute epoxy and it's already feeling rubbery. But we'll give it a bit longer. We want that to be as hard as possible. Okay, so moving on.
Got a couple of questions.
Go on then. So let me just quickly just go through super glue then. So we've got different coloured super glue. We've got black, and it also comes in white, and there's also amber, which can be handy for finish repairs. Different coloured super glues, different viscosity super glue. So super thin is great for cracks, and then the thick stuff is great for like building up, like you just saw me building up a corner. But oh yeah, and you've got your accelerator for making it go hard instantly. So this makes it go off instantly. And then if you are working with any super glues, you really make sure you've got some debonder in. So this will, the worst thing you can do if you do get your finger stuck to something, the worst thing you can do is just rip it off. what you've got to do is try and peel it off really slowly, gently, and you apply the debonder, and that melts the glue. So hopefully, if you've got some debonder in, could get you out of a sticky situation. Go on then, let's do questions, and then I'm going to move on to...
Okay,
we've done super glue, we're going to move on to wood glue next.
Okay, so Greyheart says, how do we stop super glue from getting that white haze, that bloom? Is there anything you can recommend?
I don't really know. I think it's caused by moisture being trapped. So you get less of it if you've got a dry environment, and you get more of it the more glue you splash about. But it does just sand off, and by the time you sanded it and polished it, you would never even know it was there. So it's something that I don't think you need to worry about. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay,
You can
so-
see actually, if you look closely on this, it's gone a bit white. That's just where, yeah, I think it just traps moisture as it dries, and it gives a sort of white hazy appearance. But I guarantee when we sand that up later on, you'll see it will just go perfectly black.
Okay, so Carly Elliott asks, is it true that excess glue affects guitar intonation in acoustics?
No, I don't think so. I think yeah, I think there's a lot of mystique and stuff, especially around acoustic guitars. I'll just tell you quickly, it's a quick story. I know someone who's slagged off in magazines for making an acoustic guitar, because they look inside and check for excess glue, and you'll get slagged off for that if you send in a guitar for review and there's glue, they can see glue squeezing out inside. But you look inside any Gretsch and it's a mess. I'm telling you, there's glue squeeze out everywhere. And so obviously Carol's telling me to wipe my
It's all
face.
around your nose now.
What is?
The black-
Dust. Covered in dust. I'm not happy unless I'm covered in dust, am I? What was I on about? Yeah. So we try and work as cleanly as possible, and with all my guitars, obviously it's one of the things we pride ourselves on as we get better as guitar makers. And as I will mention later on, when we do actually do some wood gluing, the amount of glue you put on, you kind of get more pernickety about it the better you get. So I always recommend you put on a little bit more than a little bit too less. It's always better to put on a little bit too much than a little bit too less. You don't want to starve the joint, because that will probably weaken it. But if you put a little bit too much glue on, then it will just squeeze out and you can clean it up. So those are a few little tips. I will come to more about wood gluing in a minute. Hopefully, did that answer the question?
A couple of quick questions before we move on to another glue. Adam Pinner asked about where you get black glue from, and TV101 said that he hadn't come across amber glue. So, and where might you get that from? Don't say Stu Mack, he said, but
yeah, well, they've got everything.
is that where it is, black glue from?
Yeah, if you want to get it from the UK, I'm not affiliated to any of these people, by the way, but they're all my friends. At least I hope they are. We like to think of them as our friends. So Bill from Tone Tech has black glue, but it's not the Stu Mack stuff. This stuff, obviously, I was showing you is from Stu Mack. They sell everything, but you've got to pay the import tax, and people don't like doing it. And also, we like to support our local suppliers. So, yeah, if you're in the UK, hit up Tone Tech, and they'll sell you the black stuff.
What about the amber?
I'm not sure about the amber. You'll have to hunt that down, but definitely, the guys in the US will have that stuff.
Okay, one last question about super glue.
Go on then.
How long can you keep super glue once you've opened it?
Good point. Super glue has a shelf life. It depends on the temperature. So some people, if you buy super glue in bulk, you need to keep it in the fridge. So keep it cool, and it will last longer. You'll notice that if you buy the thin stuff, it gradually gets thicker over time. So you can still use it, but it just gets thicker until it becomes so thick it won't come out of the bottle, and then it's time to throw it away.
Sorry, I did say one last. It was a lie. One last question about super glue.
Okay.
Clinton in Hawaii says, "What does CA stand for on the bottle?"
Cyanoacrylate
Woohoo!
or something.
Oh, there it is.
Cyanoacrylate. Look, it says it on the bottle there. Yes, so it's poisonous. You don't want to be breathing the vapour from this stuff.
You do not.
So make sure you've got reasonable ventilation. I'm not sure a mask would even help you because it's like a vapour. You should have a really, really good mask. So that's super glue, hopefully, pretty much covered. We'll come back at the end and I'll show you how these clean up. Our really rough inlay experiment. We've done epoxy, different types of epoxy. So there's 5 minute and there's a 30 minute, and there's lots of different types as well that we use. You can also use epoxy for filling the grain. That's subject for another video, grain filler. By the way, if you've got any ideas of what you want me to do in future videos, then make sure to leave a comment. Mark, tell me how to do the grain filler, that kind of thing. Then I'll make sure we do a video about it. We've got loads of good stuff coming up, but I'm always open to ideas, and sometimes we can just slot one in, like we did recently last week, where I demonstrated how to do this skunk stripe, how to fit the skunk stripe into the back of a one-piece bolt-on neck. So that was a little special that we did. So if you've got any questions or ideas, let me know. Stick it in the comments and we'll see what we can do. So yeah, I wanted to show you this little wild card before we move on. There's another kind of glue that we use in the workshop, but you're not going to be using this unless you get into the laminations. So the laminated guitar, the sides and the back of this are made up of like 5 layers of glue, which are all glued up over a mould. It takes quite some time to lay it all up, and so you need a glue with a really long working time. And so this is the stuff, the bag press stuff that we use for so this is a 3-part, as you can see here. Oops, wrong camera. This is a 3-part, and Darren even gives you the mix there and how much to mix up, which is very, very useful. Again, we're not affiliated, but Darren's one of my students actually, and one of my friends. So he'll supply you all the stuff. Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. It's Joe Rogan, isn't it? A buddy of mine. Darren's a buddy of mine.
Can I just mark a couple of things that Mark in the comments?
Go on.
So EP's in the house today, and he said a guy in the internet reckons that isopropyl alcohol works as a cheaper glue accelerator, but he's not tried it yet. Have you?
I haven't tried it, to be honest. Try it, why not? But there is usually a reason why things are cheaper. I'll say that.
It's much more flammable, isn't it?
I don't know, I wouldn't say it was any more flammable.
Doesn't come in a spray, does it?
Yeah, I guess this comes in a convenient bottle. Isopropyl alcohol. Not tried that one. Let us know in the comments if you've tried it and if it works. I'll let you know. In fact, have we got some?
So,
I just happen to have some isopropyl alcohol. So shall we try it? Man on internet says it works. Let's do it live. Right, what should we stick to what? Let's stick our test piece there.
It's a bit blurry, you need a different lens.
We'll stick our test piece down. See if it works. So, see if we can get some glue out. I should have put some tape on it, shouldn't I? Oops. Bit of glue. What do we say? Isopropyl alcohol on there. Stick it down. Guess what? It kind of works.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was a bit slower than accelerator would be, but it did work. It's kind of left a bit of a white manky, a lot more white mankiness. Yeah, ugh, don't like that.
Eraser says, next on Mythbusters.
Right, another myth busted. What is that?
Ooh. Okay.
I tell you what though, it has stuck, and it did make it go hard, but it was slower than normal accelerator.
There's gunk.
And it's left all this white gunk. It's a lot worse for the white gunk.
Yuck.
Look at that.
Rock
So
and Roll-
I wouldn't do that.
And Rock and Roller 912 is saying it's very difficult to get the isoprobe controller on at the moment.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
done
It's
by
probably
hand.
cheaper to buy accelerator anyway. At the moment, it's probably cheaper to buy accelerator. Who knows? But it has stuck. Let's just see if we can prise it off, shall we? With a chisel. Yeah. Yeah, it didn't really stick very well, did it? So I think we'll avoid that. I'd rather just wait. You know, if I didn't have the accelerator, the accelerator you were only using it to speed up the process. So rather than use something cheap and nasty, I would just wait for it to dry naturally. So yeah, not recommended then. Another myth busted. That's what we're here for. So you can go and tell a guy on the internet he's been debunked.
No, but that's not a proper experiment. You haven't done a control.
Okay, it wasn't scientifically
No,
controlled.
but it might be somewhere it is good for.
Shall we do a control?
No.
I'm quite happy to prove that the accelerator's better.
No,
Anyway, so I've done that. Now we're going to do wood glue. So most people know wood glue as being white PVA glue, kind of stuff you get with your IKEA self-assembly furniture and that kind of stuff. Let's put a bit on there. So there's your white glue, ordinary white glue, PVA, polyvinyl acrylate or something. Polyvinyl acrylate, it's a miracle of modern technology, really. You can use this for all your woodwork stuff. Any PVA will do. You can obviously get more expensive brands, and they're probably a higher quality blend, but in the end they all stick perfectly well. Any white glue will work. But most guitar makers tend to use Tite Bond, in my experience anyway. Personally, I don't like anything like animal glue. Carol's a vegetarian anyway, so we don't like that kind of stuff.
It stinks.
And it can really stink. Animal hide glue and that kind of stuff, I avoid. But this, my friends, this, let me tell you, is the king of glue. This has saved my reputation and my career on more than one occasion. But we won't go into all that now, we've bored you enough. This is what I call yellow glue, and it's Tite Bond, and the technical name for it is an aliphatic resin. Now, Darren, who is the resident lamination king of bag press, informs me that it's basically the same stuff. The white and the yellow glue is basically the same stuff. although I know that as a PVA polyvinyl acrylate, and I know that as a aliphatic resin yellow glue, apparently it's both the same stuff. This one's got yellow dye in it, but it is a higher quality, whatever it is, a blend of whatever they use. And what I can tell you is that this is faster, dries faster, has what we call a faster grab. So when you're gluing, one of the problems is when you're gluing two wood pieces together, it tends to want to slide around all over the place when it gets wet with the glue. Until the glue starts to grab, what we call grab. So with tight bond, it's what we call fast grab. So it doesn't slide about so much. So that's one advantage. It also dries harder, and so sound will transmit through it better. That might be one of the things you were getting at earlier. If for instance, if your neck joint is full of like rubbery glue, that's going to affect the tone. So that might be one thing you were getting at earlier in the comments. Too much glue can affect the tone if it's in the wrong place. So a harder glue will have less effect on the tone because the sound can travel through it better. So that's one of the reasons that we like to use tight bond. What I do then is I use tight bond on a glue joint that I would consider to be a permanent glue joint, and then I would use white glue on a joint that I might one day want to take apart. So on an acoustic guitar, that would be removing the bridge, removing the neck, that kind of thing. Otherwise, pretty much every other wood glue operation that I do is tight bond, yellow glue. So I'm going to actually do a wood glue operation right now. If you've got any questions, shout them out. We'll do a little question round now before I start.
Can we do them now? Okay,
Yep.
so on the testing thing, Eraser 101 said, what does it taste like? What does the wood glue taste like? Just kidding, he said. And then Super Clunk 6 Clinton says, okay, is it just me, but does anyone here love the smell of tight bond? Right, there's some discussion about that.
Love the smell of tight bond in the morning.
Yeah. Michael Abbott says, can you use animal glue for a skunk stripe? Dear old me. But Paul Appleton asked the
Keep them puns coming in.
Paul Appleton says, how do you remove something stuck with PVA?
Great question.
And then somebody else, oh yeah, Mark Matula said, have you used Tight Bond's liquid? Tight Bond's liquid
Yes.
hide glue.
Tight bond do a liquid hide glue, which I have used. There are some folks who believe that that a high-end acoustic guitar has to be hide glue, because that's what they used historically. But I think if you sent tight bond back in time 100 years ago, I think they'd all be using this. So that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's what I prefer. I've completely forgotten the question.
Well, he said, have you used the Tight Bond hide glue? And you said yes.
I have used it. Yes, it works perfectly. I used it on a guitar where the customer specified hide glue, so that's what I used.
Well, on that then, Russ says he's noticed that there are 3 different Tight Bond wood glues. Which one is best?
Yeah, you just want the Tight Bond original. There's Tight Bond 2, and there's like an outdoor one. You don't need that stuff. You just need the original, good old red cap.
And then the question that was asked was, how do you remove something stuck with PVA?
Brilliant question. Thank you for asking that one. So with PVA, you just use heat. This is why you'll find a lot of older guitars kind of falling apart when they've been left in a hot car. You'll have heard of that one, where the neck starts coming off because it's been left in a hot car. Hide glue is the same. It releases with heat, and also tight bond, but it takes an awful lot more. In fact, I've removed necks that were glued in with tight bond, but they only come loose about 30 seconds after you've given up all hope. So you can take apart a joint that's been done with Titebond, but it's a lot harder. And so I prefer to do to use white glue. And the way we do it is just to heat it up. So for instance, if we were taking the bridge off an acoustic guitar, I would mask up the area around the bridge with tin foil, which would reflect the heat and protect the wood underneath. And I would just leave the bridge exposed, and then I would apply heat to that bridge. So there's different ways to do it. I use a heat lamp, but you could use, some people use a hot iron. You just need to warm that bridge up, and eventually it will release. You want to use like a really flat knife, like a spatula, like a painter's palette spatula or something. Palette knife is the word I was thinking of. To just go all around the edges, and eventually if you warm it up for long enough, the joint, it will just release. There's different jigs you can make or buy for releasing when you've glued a neck on, that just applies gentle pressure whilst you heat it up, and eventually the neck will just come out. So yeah, heat and pressure is how you get it off. And you can use steam as well. In some cases we'll actually inject steam into the joint, and it's the heat that actually makes it release rather than the water. But yeah, steam helps as well.
Couple more questions?
Go on then, couple more questions.
So
I'll get me stuff ready.
Eddie Cameron says, are there any occasions where you would water down or thin Titebond?
No, not Titebond, because if we're using Titebond, I'm usually going for a permanent glue. But there are occasions where I will water down ordinary wood glue and use that. So for instance, I mentioned earlier about the super thin runny super glue is good for repairing cracks. But you can also thin down the white glue, up to 50-50 I would say, with water. And then it makes it really good for running into thin cracks and that kind of thing. So I will occasionally thin down the white glue for repair purposes. And that's another good point as well, is that I would only use white glue for repairs. So I wouldn't use Titebond on an old guitar to do a repair. I would only use white glue, because it's a lot more easy to remove if something goes wrong, or if you need to remove it again later on. So if I'm repairing an old guitar, I would avoid Titebond, and I would use white glue, cracks and splits and stuff. Thin it down 50-50 with water. Make sure you clean it all off afterwards. Fantastic. So it's still a miracle of modern science, is the PVA glue. But Titebond's just kind of a little bit better all round, unless it's for a joint that you might want to disassemble at some point. Okay. Okay.
One last one. Tomaz Senkiewicz says, I know a guy that is adding a bit of salt when he is gluing the crystals of salt, preventing from moving glued parts. Interesting.
Yeah, we've had this one.
But that was
the salt trick. Yeah, the salt trick.
Did you put that in the glue?
Yeah, no, the salt trick I misunderstood. We had this in the comments. A guy told me this in the comments.
That was in the YouTube.
I misunderstood. If you look in my thing, there's a thing called the salt trick on my channel. What I found was that if you do it dry and you sprinkle salt in between the two bits and you rub them together when you're joining the body blanks, then it kind of like gets them to seat together absolutely perfectly. It's a brilliant little trick. Personally, I wouldn't use it in the glue myself. So yes, I misinterpreted the comment, and what the guy was actually meaning was to add it to the glue to stop it from sliding around, as you say. But I don't like the idea of having salt in my glue joint. I'd rather it was only glue, to be honest. In case it affected the strength of the joint, I would imagine it must have some effect, although I haven't tested it. we'll have to do a test one day. So I use glue. I use the salt trick, but I do it dry, and it kind of acts as sandpaper to help the two bits sit together better. Check out my video on that. I don't like to apply it to the glue. I use another method to stop it sliding around, which I'll show you right now once we've finished doing the questions.
Okay, so
I'm going to glue this fretboard on in a second for you.
James Bissett says,
Hey James!
James says, Gorilla wood glue, good or bad? Question mark.
We don't use Gorilla Glue. I would use it maybe for making jigs and stuff. Having said that, you can make guitars. You know, if that's the only glue you've got and you can't get anything else, don't let it stop you from building guitars. But I wouldn't use it as my glue of choice. But that kind of thing would be ideal for making jigs and fixtures and that kind of thing.
Yeah, some feedback there that apparently it's hard to control as it expands, and it expands in time is what a couple of comments about Gorilla Glue being said, and that it's cancer free. I mean, these are all chemicals.
Yeah, most of these glues are not particularly pleasant to work with, so we keep it down to a minimum. Try not to splash them about too much, and keep your area clean.
Eraser 101YT says, is it a good idea to use epoxy for gluing the wings onto a neck through guitar, or will tight bond do?
Tight bond would be better. I would always choose tight bond for a wood to wood glue, given a choice. Yeah, you might find that they move if it gets warm with the epoxy. Much more likely to move. So let's do this thing.
Someone just pointed out that Gorilla is a brand and that they do different glues.
Cool. Yes, so as I said earlier, I'm not going to recommend any brands except for maybe Tight Bond, because they are the king of glues and they did save my career. So here, what I'm going to do is, now I've already very carefully located where my fretboard goes, and this is how I stop it from sliding around. So you'll notice that I've got pins and they fit into the little holes. So what I did was I carefully aligned my neck, and so that I can get my fretboard and I can take it on and off and it goes back in the same place. So if you want to know how I located that, there isn't really time to go into all that right now, so you'll have to join up on the course. On the full premium courses, you get the edited versions of all this. But what I've done is I've carefully aligned that to make sure that it's in the right place, and I've put some pins through to stop it from moving about. I'd rather do that than use salt, as we were talking about earlier. So that's solid on there, but I'm still going to do a test run first. This is called a caul. So it's a shaped block that's used for clamping. It's just the same shape as the fretboard, and I've glued some cork on because my fretboard is already curved, takes up the curve. I'm going to put a clip on just to hold it together and then start applying clamps. So the reason I'm dry clamping is basically a practice run, and it means that I get all my clamps together in one place, so I haven't got to go running around the workshop looking for clamps while the glue's drying. So it's a good idea to do a practice run. And I'll just show you how we put these clamps on. What I do is I push up at the back here. Most people want to hold the clamp and then put it on like this, but what you'll find is if you don't hold the clamp perfectly straight, you can actually cause the fretboard to slide. But if you push it up against the bottom of the neck like that and hold it like that, then it will hold square, and then you just nip it down and it will clamp straight. We're not going to over tighten these clamps because that can cause it to twist. The idea is to get all the clamps on and then we'll go back down afterwards and tighten them up. So I'm just nipping them up, not too tight. We'll get them all on. So this is a good time to mention, I think episode 10 of Basic Techniques is going to be all about clamps and the different types of clamps that we use for guitar making.
And can I just ask you at that point, Rick de Natal says, what is that caul made of? It looks like perspex.
Yeah, it's just it's acrylic actually. I think it's acrylic.
Got some other questions.
But it could be anything. I make them out of MDF or plywood. Here's another one. It's just made from MDF. As you can see, I've just drilled a couple of holes which line up with a couple of frets. So so when we pin it, we pin through a fret slot, and it's all hidden in the end by the fret, so you can't see the actual hole in the end. Yeah, so coming next Saturday, I'm going to show you lots of different types of clamp. It might sound boring, but I'm going to finish up with the string tension simulator, which is kind of like the most fancy clamp that I've got in the workshop. So if you're interested in how to use the string tension simulator, tune in next week.
I've got some questions, Mark.
So these are different types of clamps. I'm going to take you through all these on Saturday, a week today.
Got some glue questions.
So there's my dry clamping. Always dry clamp before you glue, because then now I've got my clamps all ready and I haven't got to go running around while the glue's drying. So I'm going to just take them all off, make a nice pile, clean up a bit of area around me. I need it to be reasonably tidy and free from dust before you start any gluing process. So yeah, Carol's got a question.
Well, this is one. So Eddie Cameron says, is it advisable to glue wood within a certain time frame of final shaping, scraping or sanding? For example, say 40 minutes. We know that wood is always on the move and responding to humidity. So he's saying, is there a sort of timing or a time frame?
I guess what you're getting at is leaving it time between operations to settle. So when as you were getting at, what you were hinting at is wood is always on the move. Wood is basically like a sponge. Let me show you a neck blank that we would start with. It's a great big chunk of wood. If you imagine wood's like a sponge, it's always wetter in the middle than the edges. There's not a lot you can do about that except leave it for you know, a long amount of time. But even then, it can be wetter in the middle than on the edges. And then when you cut in, look at this, how thin this is there. So you're cutting into a slightly wetter bit in the middle. And then when it dries out, it can shrink. And so that will cause your neck to backbone, which is undesirable. So the answer to that is yes, is to just wait. So what we do is we cut the back of the neck out and then leave it to do its thing. If it's going to move, it's going to move, and there's not a lot you can do about it. You just let it do its thing, and then you straighten it up. Now, if your wood's properly conditioned and dry, then it shouldn't move. But if it's not ideal, then it may possibly move, and that's the reason why. The best thing to do is to wait as long as possible in between those operations when you've cut large chunks off. And also when you're adding, in this operation we're going to be putting glue on which contains water. So in that case, adding moisture can cause the wood to warp as well. So ideally we would wait 3 weeks after we've glued the fretboard on before we do any work on it. But in practice, obviously it depends on every piece of wood is different, but it's not normally an issue. Right, so I did my dry clamping. Now I'm going to actually do my gluing. So I'll just demonstrate this pinning operation. So there's you can see the little hole there where it's...
there's a question about that. Grey Heart has said, could you use toothpicks as locating pins?
Yeah, I guess you could. They may be a little bit big though. Toothpicks are normally about 2 mil, and this is 1.5 mil. Depends on the size of your fret wire, but you might find they're a bit big to be hidden by the fret wire. If you look now, when this is sitting on, there's the pin there. Imagine when the fret goes in, the little hole that's left behind will be completely hidden.
So, Mark, I know you don't have me interrupting, but Carly said was a bit confused because she said, so the slot for a fret goes all the way through to the neck. And this is because of the pins, right? So
no, the fret slots don't go all the way through, look. Here's the back of the fretboard. Here's the front. So the depth of the fret slots, they should be about, they should be just slightly deeper than the fret that's going to go in. About 10% deeper. 10 to 25% deeper than the frets, than the tang of the fret that's going in. So we've done our test run. We know now that that fretboard will drop on exactly in the place where I want it to. And what I'll do is I'll give those nails just another little tap, and then we'll glue it on. Let's go for it. So a couple of things I'm going to use. A spreader. So I really like to use my fingers for spreading, but you can make a spreader, something like an old credit card. And I like to cut these little grooves in. What I find is that when you spread it, you make sure you don't leave any dry spots. And what you get is these little peaks. And what I find is you put your fretboard on and they all spread out and you get a perfect even film. I find that's the easiest way to get a perfect even film. But that's what we're aiming for. So as long as you do that, it doesn't matter how you do it. So I've got a great big glue bottle here, and I was going to show you it's a good idea to decant it into a smaller bottle, which has gone missing.
So I've got a couple of general questions about glue.
Go on then.
So,
While I'm looking for my bottle. Go on.
yeah, Clint from Superclunk says, is there an optimum temperature, the best temperature for gluing? And Russ is saying, how do you store type bond to prolong its life? So there's two questions.
Store at room temperature, keep from freezing. I just read that off the bottle. Store at room temperature and keep from freezing. So that's what it says. Yeah, I would always decant this into a smaller glue bottle, which I did have already prepared for you, but it's gone missing. Really useful to have a spare bottle. So this is going to be tricky to apply just the right amount of glue, but that's what I'm trying to do. So people are always asking me what's the right amount of glue, and as I was saying earlier, it's better to put slightly too much than slightly too little. Because you don't want to starve the joint, and you can always wipe off the excess. And what I like about this spreader, hopefully you can see, is that it's very good for taking off excess glue. So you end up with this surface, kind of peaked surface, that will spread out and leave a perfectly even film. I'll just give you a close-up of that. Something like that. That's what I aim for. Just making sure there's no dry spots. Smash in. So now I can carefully drop this down and it will go back in exactly the same place. Slide it up and down until it drops into the holes. I'm going to give it another tap with the hammer. What I'll do is just put a block underneath while I tap this nail. I'm not going to tap it all the way in, I'm just going to give it a tap. Now we can apply the clamps, the coil and the clamps. Right, so here's the number one rule when you're clamping, when you're gluing. Don't panic. That's the number one rule, don't panic. You need to be reasonably quick because as soon as you put the glue on, it starts drying. So if you take half an hour, you'll end up with a really thick glue line that will be visible and unsightly. So we want our glue line to be as thin as possible. So what we do is we just get the clamps on as quick as we can, without panicking. Don't panic is the key to this one. I'm just nipping them up again and I'll go back down afterwards and tighten them up as soon as I've checked and made sure I'm happy with the position. So it all looks good. Put these ones on the end. I'm using wooden ones on the end because they're a bit bigger, a bit more suitable for this bit. And that is that. So this wasn't a lesson on how to glue a fretboard. I actually did one about that recently, and also there's the live build that I did. If you're interested in this, I did a complete build, which was this guitar here from start to finish. Obviously I glued the fretboard on that, so there's a bit more information. If you want to go and seek that out, it's in the live playlist. I'm not worrying about protecting the back, by the way, if you're wondering, because this is all going to be carved and I'm not putting so much pressure on. I don't want to damage the wood, so I'm not doing it up so tight that it squashes the wood. So nice and tight, but not crushing any wood. If it does leave a little dent, it's all going to be carved anyway, so I'm not worried about that. And that is our fretboard glued on. So I just want to show you a few little tips for cleaning up. You don't have to rush. The best time to clean up is when the glue has started to go a bit rubbery. So at this point, while it's still super runny, if I start to clean it up now, it will just spread around everywhere. So what I'm going to do is just leave it for a minute whilst I show you some tools that I'm going to use for cleaning up.
Can you take a couple of questions before you do that?
Yep, let's put that over to the back for a minute. So Carol's toothbrush is the best tool for cleaning up glue. We use a bit of water and an old toothbrush, Carol's toothbrush. For reaching into areas, like there's some places where we use, this is what I would call a glue chisel. So it's just a shaped piece of wood. Where's my actual chisel? Let's just clean that super glue off. It's just a shaped piece of wood that we use for cleaning up glue. It's called a glue chisel. It's just used for scraping glue, and you can make them as long or as short as you want. Great for reaching into areas like when you're doing the braces, cleaning up the braces, that kind of thing. Gluing the neck on an acoustic guitar, you have to clean up around the fretboard. You can do it this way, like that. So you can make glue chisels any shape you want to suit your purpose for scraping off excess glue. It's better to use a piece of wood rather than a piece of metal because you won't damage your wood. Once the glue's gone hard, then you'll need to use you know, an actual chisel or something to clean it off. So a damp rag is what we need, Carol. If you could get me a damp rag, I would really appreciate it.
Okay, and can you answer a couple of questions then, because I'm running that up.
Yep.
I can't keep up. Right.
Give me a question, and then if you could get me a damp rag.
I will go into that. But so did you answer the thing about the best temperature? And the best temperature for gluing, ideal, and then also for storing glue.
Okay. Yep. So as I said earlier, for super glue, you need to keep it in the fridge. If you're buying a lot of it. If you've just got one bottle, don't worry about it. But if you're buying in bulk, buying boxes of bottles, you probably want to keep it in the fridge because it goes thicker over time and will eventually be so thick you can't get it out of the bottle. So super glue needs to be kept cool if possible. All other kind of glues, just keep them at room temperature. Type Bond says keep at room temperature, don't allow it to freeze. So I'd say that would go for pretty much all the types of glue that we use anyway. So when it comes to actual gluing conditions, you want to make sure that your workshop isn't too damp. That is the main problem you'll have. With a damp workshop, you can get black spots appearing and that kind of thing. When your wood gets damp, it will stay damp for a long time, and yeah, you can get a black mold start to appear. So I would say that it's the humidity is really more important than the temperature.
Might as well have my face off as well.
But if you can you know, aim for just sort of standard room temperature and between 45 to 55 humidity. Between 45 to 50 is ideal. Just slightly drier than average is ideal. Okay, so let's thank you for the wet cloth, Carol. That's Carol's. We've got Carol's face cloth and a toothbrush now.
About that, and that's the only thing I could find.
So where's my little test piece? Let's have a look at this then.
Still got more questions, by the way.
My little test piece. Right, we're coming to the end of the stream, folks. So
I've got the questions. You can't.
hopefully we'll get through all the questions.
Yeah, we will.
We'll do our best. I'm just going to sand this up. Did I have a bit of sandpaper? Oh yeah, I've put glue all over it. Dang. Right, here's another block. I'm just going to sand this little bit. Might be easier if I rub the thing on the block. Yeah, that's what that ISO did to the back of it, by the way. Doesn't look very nice, does it? Quick rub on the front, it's come in. Bit more. Can we have some questions then, while I'm doing this?
Okay, so right, does a damp rag spread the glue over more of the wood, or would it be better if left to dry then chiselled off? That's TV1.
Yeah, I mean, with an acoustic guitar, the last thing you want to do is spread glue all over the place. With an electric guitar, you could just sand it off and not worry about it. But with an acoustic, you don't want to be doing any more sanding than absolutely necessary because the plates are all, you know, specific thicknesses. So with an acoustic guitar, then we get extra careful about exactly the amount of glue we put on. And Yeah, wait till it goes rubbery or leather hard before you start to remove it. If you start spreading it around, as I mentioned earlier, with a damp rag, you can just spread it around all over the place and make a mess. So you're better off leaving it for 10 or 20 minutes, as I've done.
Okay, and Ripped in a Towel said that the downside of a damp rag is that the spread of glue can interfere with a stain later if you don't clear it off properly.
Yes, you certainly need to remove all traces of glue before you put any stain on, because it will affect the appearance for sure. Okay, so that's a very quick clean up of the inlays. You can see the outline of the original holes that I drilled there. So that's how it looks, just rough. I'll maybe just give it a... So we would put fingerboard oil on there, and then it looks different. Let me wipe a bit of oil. This is just lemon oil.
I've got more questions, by the way.
Lemon oil.
I've got two.
Just ordinary lemon oil. I'm just going to wipe it on, and then we'll see what it really looks like. So this is, it came out looking not bad, didn't it? Actually, those circles are showing up much better on the camera than I can see in real life.
Really?
In real life, I can't even see those circles.
Huh.
But let's wipe on a bit of fretboard oil and see how it looks. So that makes the wood go a lot darker, you see. It makes the inlays stand out better. Now I think it's quite clear now that you can see that, well, I can still see a circle here, but on this one I can't see a circle. So this one was the super glue, wasn't it? The big one was the super glue. So as I said, in this situation I always use super glue. It goes a lot blacker. That's the black super glue, proper black. So now we know. We can use epoxy. I would use epoxy if I needed a bit more working time. If I was doing like a great big tree of life or something, you might want a bit more working time. And maybe if we added a bit more black powder, it'd go blacker. A bit of trial and error might help. But yeah, you can see how that looks almost perfect. Even though, if you remember, I just drilled a great big hole.
That's
So there you go.
Yeah. So I know you want to finish. We've got
Cheat
a couple
methods.
Of questions.
A cheat. You what, Carol?
Couple of questions.
A couple of questions then while I'm just cleaning up the glue.
Right. So way back, Jon, Clinton Superclone asked about the best glues for veneers. I think bag press must have left the room temporarily when asked that. So he was asking about laminations and gluing laminates. What can you recommend?
Yeah, it depends what you're doing. If you're just gluing one veneer onto, say, let's say a veneer onto the headstock, for instance, tight bond. But if you're doing complicated layups, like as I showed earlier, this laying up the sides and the back for this is 5 thicknesses of veneers to make up the back and sides. Look at that, spectacular. Cheers for that, Darren. I really ought to get that one finished, eh? Yes, and if you're interested in how we do all that, then Darren was kind enough, he actually came to the workshop and filmed a masterclass for us on using the bag press for guitar making. So yeah, using clamps for all those layers of veneers would be an absolute nightmare. So instead of clamps, we use a vacuum bag press. So that's something that we'll be talking about next week. When I'm doing clamping and holding, a bag press is certainly one of the things that I'm going to talk about, along with the string tension simulator and a few other things as well you're not going to want to miss.
And And there was a whole video about glues, wasn't there? Gluing. There was you asked a question.
Yeah, we did a whole
about
series,
gluing.
a masterclass on using the bag press for guitar making, and there's a whole section on the glue. So this is the glue we use. I'll just show you again quickly. It's a 3-part. There's 3 parts to it, and Darren's kind enough to put the instructions how to mix it. This stuff gives you a lot more working time, essential for doing that kind of like laying up lots of laminations. We'll be doing some we'll be doing a lot more stuff on that coming up, because we've got the 335 stuff. We'll be doing the 335 series at some point very soon. James Bissett. So look out for that.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just going to use the glue chisel that I showed you to clean up this excess glue now. It's had a few minutes to dry a bit. Comes off a lot easier. You could probably do with a bit longer really. I'll answer another question, shall I? Here's another question, Carol.
Well, it's not about gluing, so you can answer right round it.
We'll do last questions then.
So this is Mitch's world travel. He's back in the house.
Mitch's world travel.
Today he's actually asking
Thank
a
you.
question. No, but he hasn't. Right. So what I'm saying is he was asking about fret wire. Can you just? Is there special wire that you use for frets, or can you just buy any old wire?
Well, obviously fret wire is a special thing that's made for guitars, to specific sizes. The quick answer to that is make sure you buy your fret wire from wherever you buy your fret saw from. But fretting is going to be one of the 3 remaining guitar making techniques. So this is number 9. We've got 10, 11 and 12 to go. So that's going to be clamping and holding, which will include the string tension simulator and the bag press. That's coming up on Saturday, I think. I'm not entirely sure what order we're going to do them in, but probably clamping and holding, followed by some fretting techniques. Actually, I might leave the fretting till last, but we'll see. The other one I want to do is so fretting techniques is going to be like installing frets and then leveling them, recrowning them, dressing the fret ends, that kind of thing. And then I really want to do one on soldering techniques, because well, that's one of the things that I really struggled with when I was starting out on my own. But there's a few little simple tips and tricks that I can show you that will get you soldering like a master. So there's 3 more techniques to come. Clamping and holding, which is more exciting than it sounds. What did I say? Fretting and soldering. After that, we've also got our 5,000 subscriber special coming up. So there's 4 amazing videos coming up that you need to watch out for. After that, it's top secret. We're going to do something amazing after that. We're upping our game, but we're keeping it all under wraps.
Am I getting fat then?
Yeah, I haven't even told Carol yet.
So
So are we done?
we'll pretty much just say that.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to show you the clean up. So obviously it's a lot easier to clean up now. I don't know if you can maybe zoom in, Carol, and get while I'm working. I'll use my damp rag just to keep my glue chisel clean. You can see, hopefully you'll see it. Could still do with a bit longer, but it's coming off nice and easy. Pretty clean. It's still a bit wet, to be honest. So you can use the damp rag just as a rag. And I always like to get Carol's toothbrush in there, don't I, Carol? Keep it as dry as possible though. I'm just cleaning the toothbrush with the rag. You could have
rag.
a jar full of water jar full of water would be handy to keep the rag clean. But as I'm just doing one job, it's fine. I might change that clamp for one that's not going to keep falling off. And there we are. Task complete. It's a lot easier to clean off the glue before it goes rock hard. But every bit of this glue needs to be cleaned off. Especially around the neck joint. So there's some glue in there that I'm going to take off. A little bit of glue squeeze out around the neck joint there. Get that. So I'm actually going to leave that for another 10 minutes and then give it another check. Make sure there's no glue left. And then maybe it will appear again in a future live stream. Who knows? But I'll be cracking on with this now. I need to get this guitar finished as soon as possible. So I'm going to be cracking on with that this week and maybe give you an update at some point on how it went. But there we go. So I hope that you found something interesting in that. Maybe you discovered a new type of super glue you hadn't seen before or something. Hopefully you found something interesting and useful. If you did, give us a like and a share. And if you're new, then make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our new videos. If you want to become a premium member, then you can get access to the full courses, which are all highly edited, professionally, step by step, so that you don't have to waste 2 hours every week listening to me waffle. Or you can just become a supporter. If you just want to support us, then you can just become a supporter, and there's loads of free stuff as well. If you head over to the website, then there's a whole free set of patterns and plans that you can download, and the forum is completely free. So if you get stuck, you can ask a question, and we're all there to help you out. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, especially if you've watched right till the end. And yeah, remember the most important thing. What is it, Carol? What's the most important thing?
What, in life? Oh, I don't know.
Check twice.
Oh, well, of course.
Cut once.
Yeah.
Fade to black. Yeah, I was trying to like give you a clue as what I was doing, Carol.
Right, okay.
I'm wrapping it up.
Okay, say it again.
Check twice, cut once.